Confessions of an Arcade Addict podcast is brought to you by Anchor. Anchor is the one-stop shop for recording, hosting, and distributing your podcast, and also they can match you with good sponsors so that you can get paid for it as well. So if you've got something to say and you're not quite sure how to start a podcast, go to anchor.fm/start today. Hey folks, Brian here. I want to thank each and every one of you who has liked, reviewed, rated, and subscribed to Confessions of an Arcade Addict and telling your friends and everything like that. Please keep it going. I just recently went up over 500 likes on Facebook, and I'm really, really grateful to each and every one of you. Now on with the show. I'm home. Welcome to the Confessions of an Arcade Addict podcast, an introspective look at video gaming from the classic era to the modern day. Now here is your host, Brian. Hey folks, what's going on out there? Brian here, and this is episode number 32 of the Confessions of an Arcade Addict podcast. When last we left, I think when I recorded episode 31 was about 3 weeks ago. I'm trying to get back on schedule. I haven't been doing much except for playing games at home. I've been wanting to go to... Oh, I lied. I'm sorry. I went to Pinball Pete's for a little bit last Sunday, just for a little bit to hang out and sort of clear the head. But aside from that, it's the same kind of frustrations with Pinball Pete. Some of the machines that I play still aren't working 100%, and it's just a little frustrating, but it is what it is. You know, everyone's still dealing with COVID. I mean, we just elected a new president. There's going to be a bunch of unrest, I'm pretty certain of, for a little while until things start to calm down. But aside from that, yeah, I've just been playing games at home, aside from that little jaunt to Pinball Pete's. I'm thinking about going to the arcade in Brighton, not next weekend, maybe the one after that, the weekend before Thanksgiving, I might go. We'll see how my finances shape up. Let's see, I've been playing Battletech. I actually got Chronicles of Mystara off of Steam, so I can play it on my PC. I've been playing Path of Exile. I've gotten back into that. I've been messing around a little bit with Star Wars Squadrons. Nothing all that crazy, but, you know, just been doing the usual things. And, of course, you know, working on things for the podcast. And my episode notes are going well into the 40s now. I think I'm, like, up to episode 45. So, you know, I'm going to be around for a little while. So, you know, buckle in, folks, and I just hope you enjoyed taking the ride along with me as always. I did check voicemail and emails, and still nothing out there. So, once again, I'm going to ask you, if you've listened to any of the last 31 episodes of this podcast and there's something you want to talk about or ask about, by all means, just get a hold of me, arcadeaddictbrian@gmail.com. That's all one word, by the way. Also, I am on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Tumblr. On Facebook, all you have to do is search for Confessions of an Arcade Addict. It'll take you right to the page. There is a discussion group that goes along with it. Also on Twitter, my handle is arcadeaddict_B. On Instagram, I am arcadeaddictbrian, and Tumblr is tumblr.com/blog/confessions of an arcade addict. So once again, there are multiple ways of getting hold of me. If you are so inclined, you know, I'm here. You know, it gets a little lonely just sitting here in front of my computer with a headset on, you know, talking about stuff that happened, you know, in my gaming past. So yeah, please, by all means, you got something to say, as long as you're nice, say what you will, and we'll talk about it. Okay, I got quite a bit to get to here, so let's just not waste any more time. Arcade Rundown.
Good morning, Mr. Phelps. Your mission, Jim, should you decide to accept it, is to make Stepan believe Townsend's information. As always, should you or any of your IM force be caught or killed, the Secretary will disavow any knowledge of your actions. This tape will self-destruct in 5 seconds. Good luck, Jim.
Arcade Rundown. Arcades that I want to go to. Now, I know how screwed up things are with COVID and a lot of uncertainty, especially since we don't have a vaccine yet. But um, once things do get back to normal, and I truly believe that they will, it may just take some more time. I'm going to see if I can get some money together, and I'm going to take a holiday weekend and get on the road and go to Chicago. I call it Arcade Central because there are at least 10 arcades and barcades in the Chicago area, and it's just a lot of things. I mean, I've been watching Jack Danger streaming on Twitch for years. Oh goodness, I think it's upwards of 5 years now, maybe even six. And he's based out of Chicago, and he's got his own place where he has multiple pinball machines. That's what he streams, pinball. And before COVID hit, he used to go to all of these arcades in the greater Chicago area, and he would stream live from there, which was cool. He would stream walking there or driving there, and then he'd get himself set up at the arcade that he went to, and he would just make a day of it, which was actually cool to watch. So yeah, I actually met Jack Danger when he came here to Ann Arbor, Michigan, and it was cool to meet him and his wife, and their first child. They've since had another child. um, and it was just really cool just to meet him. And I did ask him during a stream one night if I could hang out with him at his HQ, and he said, "Yeah, by all means, let me know, and we'll make a day of it." And I'm like, "All right, cool. I'll take you up on that." That was a couple years ago, but I think I'll be able to get the funds together and go out there, and just make like a 3-day weekend of it or something like that. Yeah, I also intend on getting a hold of Greg Hansen, who does videos on YouTube called Arcade Impossible, where he finds video game machines and puts them in the basement of his house. And I also want to get a hold of him and hang out with him, and I want to get their uh, takes and critiques on the various arcades around Chicago because they've been to all of them, I'm pretty sure. I did a little internet search list of arcades that are definitely interesting that either I don't know about or I've seen on Jack Danger, or when Doc Mac does his stream on Twitch. Um, his nickname is Ghost Lord 000, if I'm not mistaken, and they do a mystery game reveal. As of Let me look it up because I think they are really, really close to 800 games, but I am not 100% sure. So let me just check this real quick. Okay, I'm back. Yeah, as of the time of this recording, which is Friday, November 6th, they are at 793 games. I knew they were close to 800, but Facebook hadn't gone crazy, so I know they hadn't reached the milestone of 800 yet. So yeah, I mean, Galloping Ghost, of course, is number one on my list. It goes without saying. Let's see, there's Emporium Arcade, Logan Arcade, which has two locations in Chicago. I've seen Jack Danger stream from both of them. Pixel Blast Arcade, which looked really promising. Izzy's Arcade Bar, which is another place, and Headquarters Beercade. These are just the ones I just did with a cursory search of arcades in the city of Chicago. So, I mean, I'm planning on doing just doing like a 3 day weekend and just getting as little sleep as possible and just going to these places and having a good time and finding out what they're all about because hey, I work hard. I deserve a vacation even if it's only a 3 day weekend. Let's see. All these places look really good on their sites and they come pretty highly rated online as well. I better put away like $200 to spend for this little trip and stock up on Icy Hot because I ain't no spring chicken anymore. Oh yeah. So yeah, arcade rundown. Those are the arcades I want to go to. By the time I get to do this list may have gotten larger, but we'll see. So if you live in the Chicago area and you have an arcade that you like that isn't on the list that I came up with, of course, it's only like 6 places. I think there are at least 10 to 12 in Chicago, if not more. Get a hold of me, arcadeaddictbrian@gmail.com. Tell me why I should visit the arcade that you recommend. So, yeah, let's break away from that and let's move on with the show. Let's go to top tens. Top tens. Atari 5200 games. Alright. This list wasn't that hard to comprise because I didn't play a lot of 5200 games, even though I owned a 5200 system for a few years. Um, I only owned one of them, one 5200 game, and the rest of them I borrowed from friends and family members or I played at friends' houses. I did like the 5200 because the games were much closer to the arcade experience than their 2600 counterparts, even though the controllers were terrible. That's just the truth of it. There are times where I wish that I had gotten a ColecoVision because the ColecoVision actually had better games and a wider array of them, but it is what it is. We all make decisions in our lives, some of them not so great. All right, so let's get on to this top 10. Once again, these are just 10 in order. I have no honorable mentions because, like I said, I didn't play very many of 5200 games, so let's get right to it. Pac-Man. This was the game that made me want a 5200 in the first place. I told a story I think I told a story of Christmas 1983 when I got my 5200. It was the driving reason why I wanted to get one because the 2600 adaptation was a major disappointment to me and I felt somewhat cheated. Even though I didn't buy the 2600 version of Pac-Man, I rented it from Video Connection first, and I'm glad I did because I'd have been really upset. um, so yeah, I mean, throughout 1983, I begged and pleaded with my mother to get me a 5200 for Christmas. Pac-Man was the packing game. My mother, of course, being an adult and not understanding my arcade video game addiction, she asked me, "You have an Atari already. Why do you want this one?" I told her, I said, "Mom, the games are better," you know? And so she relented and she bought me a 5200 for Christmas with Pac-Man as the packing game. I honestly think, and I think I said this when I did Are You Experienced for the 5200? I think I said that if Atari had packed in Pac-Man from the beginning, I think the 5200 would have had a better showing than it did as far as sales and whatnot. Okay, you know, even then, I knew the ColecoVision was the better system, but I had an allegiance to Atari, and it would cost me in the long run, and that's just the truth of it. This game was an also almost perfect translation of Pac-Man, And of course, being the only game I had, I played it constantly until I could reach the fifth or sixth key with regularity when starting from scratch. I did like the fact that the 5200 had a level select button. So if you just wanted to practice the key levels, you could skip ahead to those levels and start from there, which was kind of cool. Okay, yeah, that's Pac-Man. I mean, I want to think about how many times I played it through going into 1984 because I played it a lot. Okay, Defender. Oh, this was a fantastic translation of the arcade game. Now, while the action of the game is maybe a couple of steps short of the utter chaos the arcade machine could bring, it was still more than enough to keep you on your toes once you're able to come close to mastering the controller setup, and that did take a while because, I've said it before in our experienced, and while I was reading off Wikipedia, I said that's the major downfall of the 5200 was the fact that the controllers were so terrible. Aside from the fact they didn't recenter themselves like the ColecoVision controllers, they were fragile. Anybody who was a serious game player, and I was one of them, yeah, you could break those controllers easy. But yeah, I mean, Defender was great. I used to borrow this game from my cousin Matt all the time, who lived like 3 houses down from me. As a matter of fact, I'll go right into the next game in my top tens for the 5200, Robotron. I was always begging my cousin to borrow this one too. I was better at this version than the arcade at this time. Like I've said, the funny part about Robotron is that I'm better at the arcade game now than I was back in 1982 when I was 13 years old, and the action was a little slower paced, but it was still enough to really keep your attention and keep your focus. And a lot of similarities in the 5200 version were in the arcade version. But yeah, it was a fun game and I loved it. Okay, Congo Bongo. This was a game that I would borrow from my friend Damon, who lived on the other side of the street, one, two, three, four, five, 7 houses down from me, on my home street. Yeah, he had a 5200 and he had this and a couple other games. But yeah, I would borrow this from him from time to time. I think he got a 5200 when it first came out, when Super Breakout was the packing game, so I would trade in Pac-Man for this. Which was, a fairly equitable trade in my opinion. Um, Now, the game itself was pretty interesting. It was like Donkey Kong, but it was done from an isometric point of view. I wasn't very good at it, and because I wasn't good at it, it frustrated me, and, I would give the game back after a few days because I just wasn't having that much fun with it. But, Congo Bongo, it's the 5200 version of the arcade game made by Sega in, I think, 1982 is when it came out in the arcade, and I think this version came out in 83. So yeah, I mean, Congo Bongo, it was interesting. Just I wasn't really good at the game. Missile Command, of course. I mean, the ubiquitous Missile Command. I mean, and going from 1980 to about, I'd say probably about 1983, maybe even 84, I was all about Missile Command. I would love to play it, but after a while, I sort of got away from it. Um, this is the direct port from the version made for the Atari 400 and 800 computers, as was said in my description of the game in Are You Experienced, that basically an Atari 5200 was like an Atari 400 or 800 computer with the keyboard taken away. That's pretty much what it was. All the games were on these cartridges, but yeah, that's pretty much what it was. Like I said with the Missile Command for both the 2600 and the 5200 version, I wondered every so often, especially the 5200 version, why it wasn't more true to the arcade. Just in that, well, in this version, of course, you have the killer satellites and the bombers who drop missiles on you as they go across the screen, but you only still had one missile base. You didn't have three, and that was something that I always wondered about because I would think that it would not have been that hard to make the 5200 version a lot closer to the arcade, at least in that aspect. Everything else was pretty much spot on. Ms. Pac-Man, another great translation for the 5200. I only played this a couple of times over a friend's house, if I remember correctly. But my impressions of it were, this was pretty much, you know, really a really good translation from the arcade to the 5200, and that was only to be expected. Let's see, the Dreadnought factor. Now, I first found out and played this game for the Intellivision, but I like this version better because it looked better and the action was a little faster, and dare I say, the controls were slightly better. The game pitted you against a massive spaceship where you had to destroy gun emplacements, exhaust ports, enemy fighters as you tried to destroy Dreadnought ship piecemeal. I mean, I love the game, as frustrating as it could be at times. Rescue on Fractalis. I think I played this for the 5200 once or twice, but I'm going more off of my Commodore 64 memories because the game was pretty much identical to the 5200 version, even though I think the Commodore 64 version looked better, but the gameplay was the exact same. You piloted a ship on a planet to rescue stranded pilots on the surface, all the while dealing with enemy spacecraft and aliens trying to board your ship and destroy it from within. The first time I saw an alien disguised as a human pop up on the screen trying to pierce the canopy of my spaceship, I about had a heart attack. I remember that vividly. I mean, it was a fun game, but it could be scary because once you got to higher levels in the game, the pilots that you would find on the planet, they could be regular pilots, and at first you would know just by the skin tone of the pilot running towards your ship whether it was a regular pilot. I forget. I think it's called a squadron leader or something like that, or it was an alien. But as you went further along in the game, the aliens could better disguise themselves as humans, and you wouldn't know until the pilot reached your ship and either knocked on the door or jumped up on your canopy and tried to break into your ship. Um, I have so many memories of this game; it's ridiculous. But yeah, I mean, I love Rescue on Fractalis. It was a fantastic game. You know, kudos to whoever designed it. Maybe I'll do an RU experience for it. Maybe I won't. We'll see. River Raid. I mean, what can I say about it? It was like the 2600 version, but it was better. Enough said. That's all I can say. I've only played it a couple of times, but what I do remember is that it was much better. It was of course better looking than the 2600 version, but it played similarly. I think it had a couple of other differences. I should just play it in emulation and find out, but what are you gonna do? Yeah, I'm a little lazy right now. And finally, Zaxxon. And I put this on the list just because I'm a Zaxxon fan. It's kind of funny because I've just noticed on the internet when they talk about arcade games and Zaxxon gets brought up, a lot of people hate this game. It's really, really funny. But I mean, whether it be the arcade game or a version of any of the home systems, you know, I was one of those quote unquote weirdos who liked it. I mean, the game is fun, it makes you think in split second increments, and I like it. So, what am I going to say? So, yeah, those are my top 10s for the Atari 5200. If you have a favorite that you think should be on this list, hey, you know what to do. ArcadeAddictBrian at gmail.com. Let's uh do a little unfinished business. Time for some strategy.
I'll be damned.
What happened?
Combat tactics, Mr. Ryan.
Oh, I never should have doubted you, boy!
There's a plan in everything, kid. And I love it when a plan comes together.
Hey, it's about time for me to employ a little strategy.
Time for some strategy. Star Wars. As of this recording on the second week of November 2020, I went to the arcade in Brighton earlier today, and after not playing Star Wars since the last time I played it, which was almost a month ago, I got number one on the high score list again, albeit by 9,000 points. Not too shabby, really. Okay, let's get through this. Normally, I start on level 5, which gives you an 800,000 point bonus for destroying the Death Star, but I'll go through it as if you're starting from level 1. With level 1, as you start, it's just a dogfight with TIE fighters, followed by a trench run on the Death Star. In the dogfight stage, everything's fairly easy. Shoot down the TIEs for 1,000 points each as soon as you get your crosshairs on them, and shoot the fireballs that they shoot at you for 33 points each, and do your best to survive without getting hit. After, I want to say, about 30 to 45 seconds, I think, the TIE fighters will peel off towards the Death Star, and you follow them in. On level 1, you go straight to the trench run. The trench run level 1 is easy. The easiest way to get through it is to fly near the top or the bottom of the trench, and then when the gun emplacements start shooting fireballs at you, move up or down to evade them. Don't shoot anything. Don't use your lasers until you get near the exhaust port at the end, and a message comes up that you get 100,000 points for using the Force. And of course, that means to traverse the level without shooting your lasers at all. Once the message comes up, immediately start firing at the exhaust port and the floor, and when your crosshairs pass over it, you fire your proton torpedoes and the Death Star is destroyed. You get 25,000 points for destroying the Death Star, and 5,000 points per point of shield energy you have remaining, and if you took a hit somewhere along the way, you get 1 shield point replenished, and it's on to level 2. Level 2 is the same, but this time, after the dogfight, and you make your run on the Death Star, you're skimming the surface of the Death Star while red gun emplacements shoot fireballs at you. Shoot them for 200 points apiece, and just either shoot the fireballs they shoot at you or evade them. Easy. After time, then you move on to the trench run here as well. Now it starts getting harder because the gun emplacements lining the trench walls that shoot at you faster, and now catwalks start lining the trench, which need to be avoided. The same rules apply. Don't shoot at anything if you think you can get through it without losing a lot of shield energy. And again, you get your 100,000 point bonus on top of destroying the Death Star and whatever shield energy you have left. Then it's on the level 3 where things start getting more interesting. After the dogfight, when you make your run on the surface of the Death Star, now laser towers start emerging from the surface of the Death Star, and they have white tops on them. You shoot the tops for points. It's a progressive 200 point bonus, which means the first one you shoot is 200 points, the second one's 400, third one's 600, fourth one is 800, and so on and so on and so on. And if you shoot all of the tops of the laser towers, there's a number in the upper right part of the screen that tells you how many are remaining as you're flying through the level. If you shoot them all, you get a 50,000 point bonus for shooting them. So this level becomes very quickly the one where you score the majority of your points per level. The way I look at it, if you're any way decent at the dogfight, you can pull down 20,000 points pretty easy. If, of course, you're running through the trench and Death Star, of course, you get the majority of your points by using the Force. So, it behooves you, if you think you've got the skill to fly the level um, without using, without shooting your lasers and getting that Force point bonus, hey, by means, go for it. Let's see. I can't remember if it's level 3 or level 4 where Darth Vader makes his appearance during the dogfight, but he comes out in his TIE Advanced Fighter after you shoot down a TIE fighter at the beginning of the stage. He shoots quickly, his attack patterns can be frustrating because, especially in the later levels, they're firing so quickly, you basically have to walk your laser fire across the screen, shooting the fireballs that they shoot at you while you're moving the crosshairs closer and closer to the fighter so you can destroy it. That's with regular TIE fighters as well as Darth Vader. Um, you can't destroy Darth Vader either. All you can do is send him spinning off into space after you hit him, and when you hit him, you get 2,000 points. But he'll only spin off for maybe about 3 seconds, maybe 5, and then he'll come right back on the attack. Sometimes one of his tactics is to start heading directly for you as if he's going to ram you, but he fires a fireball just in front of him, so if you let him get too close, the fireball will hit you and it'll drain your shields. So, yeah, it's one of those kind of things. Also, from level 4 and forward, the trench run gets faster and trickier. The emplacements fire at you faster, the fireballs track to you quicker, and as you go through the level, the pace gets quicker too. Add to this now that there are going to be walls lining the trench, and there's going to be only one way to fly your X-Wing through that wall without ramming it and losing shield energy, and it just basically becomes a matter of quick reactions and level memorization. For research, I studied a YouTube video of a guy in UK. As a matter of fact, let me pull it up real quick because I want to give this guy a shout out. He posted this video like 5 years ago. His name is DP Firebird, and he posted a bunch of different videos. The one I watched was him going for I think it's like a personal best record of like 62 million points. So yeah, the guy's really, really good at Star Wars. I picked up a lot of things by watching his videos, not the least which is him showing it's possible to use the Force all the way through level 10, which that bonus, that 100,000 point bonus, really becomes important. Um, I I love this game. I love Star Wars. It's one of my all-time favorites. I mean, I'm not looking forward to the episode where I list my top 10 all-time favorite arcade games, but yeah, that's coming. That's down in the high 40s, close to episode 50. And of course, I've got a little lead time to do it, but I'm not looking forward to it because, yeah, that's going to be tough. I've played literally hundreds of arcade games throughout my life, and narrowing it down to 10 plus 10 or 15 honorable mentions is not going to be easy at all. But as always, stay tuned. Any questions, thoughts about my tips and tricks for Star Wars? You know what to do. arcadeaddictbrian@gmail.com. And now, let's play the Silver Ball. The Silver Ball, Space Invaders. Oh man, I mean, this was, if I do an all-time, a top 10 of pinball machines, and I might, then again I might not. I'm not 100% sure. That'll be way further down the line. But if I do, this machine would definitely be in my top 10s. I mean, this is just a great pinball machine for a bunch of different reasons. But let's go into a little bit of history on it. There's not much. Wikipedia did not have an entry for it, so after a little more digging on the interwebs, I did find a little description for it on Pinside, so I'll read it here. In 1980, Bally released a pinball version of the original 1978 video game Space Invaders, becoming the first pinball machine to be based on a video game. Bally's video game division Midway had licensed Space Invaders from Taito in Japan and decided to capitalize on the machine's incredible success by using it as a theme for a pinball machine. However, few elements from the original game, except for the sounds and front case artwork, were included in the pinball game. The artwork instead resembled the xenomorphs from the 1979 film Alien. Bally was sued over the game's artwork resemblance to designs by H.R. Geiger. In fact, they stopped production of the game due to pending lawsuits, although 11,400 machines were still produced. That's a lot. Let's see. A settlement was reached with Fox Studios where the royalties were paid to the studio for each pinball machine sold, and Fox was also given approximately 3 machines to use for the promotion of the sequel to Alien named Aliens, which came out in 1986. This machine was one of only 5 wide bodies released for production by Bally. It was designed by Jim Patla with artwork done by Paul Ferris. My experiences with it. I remember this machine very well. Trumbull Mall Arcade got it when it came out, and it was pretty different from the other pinball machines in that this one was straight up ominous looking. It really was. I mean, from the Geiger style artwork, not only on the back glass, but also on the playfield, to all the dark colors that were used in the mirrored back glass itself. This game all but dared you to throw your quarters in it. Or, if for those who are old enough to remember, your Susan B. Anthony dollars. And I think you would get, 5 credits, I think, if you threw $1 in there. But yeah. So, I mean, I remember the shots on the game being difficult but not impossible, although the switch around lane in the middle of the playfield was a source of a lot of drains, as was the center target. If I remember the game rules correctly, and I do actually have this machine in emulation, but basically what you had to do was have the hit all of the drop targets and have the ball go down all the lanes where there was a flashing light indicating an alien was there. And each time you hit a drop target or went down a lane, the light would go out, which means you had it. And the more aliens that were quote unquote taken out, the sound, the game sounds would speed up, just like in the arcade game. And it would raise your blood pressure, and the classic arcade games are classics because of that. They would mess with you. They would get you, excited, or you're getting you hyped up because the sounds in the game are moving fast. I mean, this game is notorious at it, as is Xenon, which we will talk about in a future episode. But I mean, this game was moderately difficult, but each time you knocked out all the aliens, you would get a static bonus. I'm trying to remember how it went. I think it went 20,000, 40,000, and 60,000 for each set of aliens that you took out. And of course, there were various other areas where you could get points. And of course, the switch around lane, that I mentioned, would increase the bonus multiplier. Which would max out at 30,000 points. And then, of course, it was incumbent on you to get the multipliers, which was like 2x, 3x, and 5x, if I'm not mistaken. And then, of course, I think after you got 5x, each time you hit that switch around, you get an extra ball. So, if you're really good at pinball machines, and I knew a couple guys who were, you could rock this game for sure. But yeah, I mean, for what I read on Pinside when I was looking for information, this machine doesn't get a lot of love. But it did have a rather profound influence on an 11-year-old me. I can tell you that. So yeah, that's Space Invaders. If you were around in those days in the early 80s, if you have a Space Invaders machine, let me know what you think of it. Because, yeah, like I said, there was scant information on the internet. ArcadeAddictBrian@gmail.com. And that will bring us to the end of this short little episode. So I will try to get this out by the end of next week, and then we can turn around and look at episode 33 coming up. Okay, I have Are You Experienced? And time for some Stragedy for one of my favorite video wrestling games of all time. Oh, what else do we have? We have an arcade review. And we have... what else? Oh, that's pretty much it. I'll have to go and see if I can add something to that. Oh, I'm sorry. We have home systems too. Jeez. How could I forget that? This is an important one too. So we have that coming and coming soon. So I will call it here. This is Brian saying, have fun out there, good gaming, be safe, be smart, au revoir.
This has been the Confessions of an Arcade Addict podcast. All music has been provided by Kevin MacLeod. You can find his music at incompetech.com. You can contact the show by email at arcadeaddictbrian@gmail.com, or you can call and leave a voicemail at 734-743-2433. Until next time, you have been listening to the Confessions of an Arcade Addict podcast. See you then.